So let's talk about no money down property development. How can you complete a property development project using none of your own money? Now, in certain property circles, no money down is seen as the holy grail to buying property. And I just want to show you in this video quickly how you can apply the no money down concept to a property development and how you can achieve a property development success without using any of your own money. So I have some notes here and I'm just going to go through my key points of what to avoid, what to do, when to do it, and how to achieve a property development using none of your own cash. So why would you want to do a property development using none of your own money? To start with, it allows you to get started. If you're in a situation where you haven't got the funds to start in property development or start your property development journey, if you bring other people involved, if you use their money, if you use none of your own money, you can actually get started. And sometimes people may not want to undertake a development because they haven't got the drive, the determination, the know-how. And you may be in a situation where you know exactly what to do and how to do it because you've watched loads of these videos and just simply lack the funds to get started. Another big reason is that it manages your risk. See, even experienced developers use the concept of no money down property development or achieving development success using none of their own money. It's something that I practice. It's something huge, large-scale developers are doing every single day. And what it also does is it allows you to bring people on your journey. So you may have family members, you may have friends, you may have a following that you've built up via social media that want to come and get involved in your journey. And one way of doing that is asking them to invest in your development projects. So how do you do a no money down property development? Well, in my head, you have 4 key milestones, 4 key elements that need funding in a property development. So the first one is all of the upfront and forward funding parts of the development. Now, this could be planning fees, this could be architects' fees, this could be surveyors' fees, it could be, any specialist reports you need for planning. There's quite a few things, but effectively it's anything needed before the purchase of the development or at the early stages of the development. Now, unfortunately, you will most likely have to fund these as a developer yourself. Now, that's not to say that you can't get back that money at the end from some of the steps that we're going to speak about after, but the initial points, you may have to fund that forward funding, front-loaded element of the project yourself. Now, I do know some developers out there that use other people's money to fund that exact part. However, I don't do that. I use my own cash, our own reserves, to get the project started, to start momentum, and then we bring in other people's money to fill the voids. Now, step 2 of the process would be the funding required to purchase the development site or land. So for this, you have 2 options. You have the option of raising money as a deposit and then achieve lending for the purchase for the rest, or you raise funds via private finance or private equity or from private individuals or investors for all of the purchase price, which is something I like to do. And then in step 3, you use development finance to fund the development costs. So let me just say that again. You would use private finance, private equity, private money that you've raised from individuals or companies by way of investment or a loan to you as the developer to purchase the site and to buy the land. You would then use a development finance loan to fund the development costs and to move forward with the development. Now, there's a couple of points to be aware of when establishing that type of setup. The first one is that there are some FCA guidelines and derivatives around raising finance with other people's money or promotion of financial activities. So just be aware that you do have a requirement to ensure that they are a qualified investor and that they're a sophisticated investor. And if you search on Google for the guidelines around that, then you'll be able to find them. I don't want to go into them in this video, but just be aware that there are some compliance requirements around ensuring you have the right type of investor. Now, investment can come in 2 ways. The first way, which is the simplest, is to raise a loan note, a loan ticket between both parties. So somebody loans you the money, you agree to pay them back a return over a fixed period of time, and you have a 1-page simple loan agreement between both parties. That's the simplest way. A second way of doing it is whereby an individual would invest into your development SPV or limited company that you've established to operate the property development, and they purchase shares in that entity or in that company, and that's the way they invest into the business. Now, you would need to take tax advice from your own accountant. Your investors would need to take tax advice from their accountants to find the best way for it to happen. But in simple terms, somebody would give you private equity, private finance, and allow you to push forward and purchase the land. Now, one point to also be aware of is that when you enter into a development finance situation, that development finance company would want to take first charge on the land or the title. So if you have a private equity investor or a private finance investor that also wants to take first charge, that's not going to be possible. And you need to make sure you reserve that first charge on the title for the development finance lender. In the past, I've had an upfront conversation with the investors when I've presented to them, when I've pitched them for the investment, and I make it clear to them that all they can get by way of security is a second charge on the title, and most of the time they're okay with that. That leaves me the first charge to give to the development finance company. Now, once you've achieved all that, you've used your own money to fund the development, to fund the forward funding element, you've used other people's money to purchase the land, you've then leveraged that to get the development finance loan in place. At the end, you will have a requirement to exit the development in some way. Now, if you're building to rent, your exit will be a refinance of the development, and once you've received the funds from that refinance, you will pay back all of your initial equity investors and your development finance loan, plus any interest costs, and then you own the property outright, and then therefore you've achieved a no money down property development. If you're building to sell, you would sell all of the units on the open market. The proceeds of sale would come back to you. You would pay back all of your loans, any investments you've had, plus any interest, and that's the other way to achieve a no money down property development. So it is possible to achieve a no money down development using none of your own money. However, you will need to use some of your money in the short term and potentially recover that back at the end. Although, like I said earlier, there are some developers I know that use other people's money to fund the initial front forward part of the development, but I've never done that. I use my own cash for architects' fees, surveyors, legal fees. I use investment into my SPV or by way of loan notes for the purchase, which comes from private investment. I then have a development finance loan that covers the development costs, and I settle all of that with a remortgage at the end, a refinance at the end, which allows us to own the property, own the project, and repay back all of that investment. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you do a no money down property investment.